Hey, well, we're back. This is session number 2 of Following Christ with Trinity. Following Christ with Trinity at gmail.com. I'll share that again at the end. You can always get in contact with us there, and particularly send us questions, comments, whatever, because the point here again is to make sure that this is a dialogue, not just some Yahoo speaking. At any rate, in this session we're going to talk about the problem of pain, because that seems to be one of the major reasons that people doubt that there's a God. The logic goes like this. How could there be a loving God when there are tsunamis in Japan, earthquakes, famine, disease, all sorts of stuff going on? Well, if you haven't read it, there's a very cool book in the Bible called Job. Oh, spelled job. Okay, but pronounced Job. All right. At any rate, this book's pretty interesting because it's got a lot of stuff that, on the one hand, is a little tough for a 21st century mind to get around, because it starts out with Satan and Lucifer showing up in heaven and sort of challenging God's feeling good about one of us humans named Job. And Job's a nice guy. Job does all the right stuff, and God's pretty proud of him. But Satan and Lucifer rolls in and says, look, you know what? Job only pays attention or responds to you or worships you because you do all this great stuff for him. But if you let bad things happen to him, he'll curse you to your face. So it's troubling, of course, that God says to Satan, well, okay, have at it. And so Satan does. And Job winds up losing all his kids, all his wealth, and even his health. I mean, he winds up with a disease that's really pretty nasty. And he has a couple of friends, 3 friends actually, who come to visit him. And basically said, look, Job, you've screwed up. That's the reason why you're having this trouble. And if you might as well just fess up to what you've done. Job winds up saying, no, I haven't done anything wrong. Although this is sort of an interesting question because, as far as we know, all humans have screwed up at some point, except for Jesus. Another discussion. At any rate, Job says he hasn't screwed up, and there's no reason for these bad things to be happening to him. He only wishes he could complain directly to God, that if God would show up, he would challenge God, explain to God why these bad things should not be happening to him, because Job's a good guy. Well, eventually God does show up, and God winds up saying, well, stand here, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. If you can answer these questions, then we can have a discussion. And God basically asks him impossible things, like how many stars there are, when was the ocean sized out to be what it is, and a whole range of things. At the end, Job basically says, look, I've been presumptuous in thinking that I know enough to even ask you. Now, or ask you why these things are happening to me. Now, it's tough because there are a lot of ways to interpret this story of Job. Important thing, at the end, after, after God sort of challenges Job about his presumptuousness, and even suggesting that he could argue with God, God restores Job to a life that was even more glorious than he had to begin with. He has more kids, more money, he's healthier, wealthier, wiser, better thought of, all that. So at the end, Job's in great shape, and Lucifer has lost. Now, there are a lot of ways, as I say, to interpret this story, but what it means to me, and the problem of pain, is this. We don't know enough to understand or explain why there are bad things that happen in the world. Excuse me. And the one thing we can be sure of is that God is in control. That no matter what's happening right now, God's got it, and it's going to be okay. Now that seems tough to us in the midst of bad things. But if in the end, none of that is the end of things, that pain, even death, that's not the end of things, that God can make things substantially better than they are right now for everybody, then these terrible things that we go through might be, I say, like the pain of going through basic training or preparation for an athletic event. I mean, you know, when you're in the gym and you're pumping iron, which everybody ought to do, we'll talk about that later, but at any rate, it doesn't feel good. You've heard that thing, no pain, no gain. But it's you have to struggle, and it's uncomfortable. But at the end, you're much better off. Now, this is tough to hear. It may not be all that comforting if you're going through a tough time right now. But the important thing to remember is look at the tough time and remember that God is going to fix it. At the end, things are going to be so much better than they appear to be right now. So, there you go. Problem, pain. That's it. So, in case you need again, Job, not job, Job. And the way to get to us for questions that you have is followingchrist@trinity@gmail.com. Anyway, God bless you. Be well. See ya.